Shalom, this is Melech Ben Yaakov of Biblical Life Coaching, coming to you live from the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, Israel. And I'm thinking maybe I'll turn it around the other way so you can get a nice view of the walls of Jerusalem for a little while, and then maybe I'll turn it back. And what I'm talking about today, and I'm going to have to take refuge underneath this little awning, because it's a bit rainy. It's a kind of a chilly day today and cloudy. But what I want to talk about today is flakers, people who flake out on you, who make plans and then unexpectedly and sometimes at the last minute cancel their plans. By the way, those are the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, for those of you who don't know. And okay, so let's talk about flakers. Okay, now I'm going to separate flakers into three categories. Okay, those who are occasional flakers, those who are occasional flakers, repeat flakers, and serial flakers. Okay. And I'm going to talk about how we can deal with each one or each stage of flakiness. So let's talk about first of all what the phenomenon is. Okay, I think it's we all know it's very annoying that someone makes plans with you, especially if you're a very organized person like I tend to be. You make plans and then and you have everything set. Sometimes you've invested a lot of time to make those plans. Sometimes you've even invested a lot of money to make those plans, and then someone says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have to cancel out." Okay, I think one has to at the first point, before we get into the three levels of flaking. Okay, occasional flakers, repeat flakers, and serial flakers. We have to talk about motivations. Okay, what makes a flaker do this? Okay, and I'm going to start with some more unseemly motivations, and I'm going to get to the less seemly motivations, because sometimes it really is an innocent flake. Okay, so one thing I remember in high school, okay, that people would flake on each other because they made plans, but then something better came along. Okay, a more popular person wanted to hang out with them, or they were invited to a better party, or something along those lines. And that's kind of malicious to do such a thing. I have a policy in my life that if I make plans with somebody, I don't care if other plans come along, even if they're much better, that I stick to the original plans, because I find it actually morally repugnant to cancel plans with somebody just because some better opportunity, or someone nicer, or someone more popular, or a better event comes along. There are exceptions, of course. I mean, let's say I've made plans with somebody, and then all of a sudden, a long lost relative has come to Jerusalem. Then obviously that's a valid reason. But if it's not a very valid reason, or if it's not, and there may be other times where maybe the second event is something I've always wanted to do or always wanted to see, and in that case also maybe on rare occasions I would flake. But if I'm doing it on a regular basis, making plans with somebody, and then just seeing, if something, am I going to get a better date, so to speak, and then cancel the original plans for the better plans, is something really, I find that morally repugnant, and I actually completely take that out of my life. Once I make plans with somebody, I stick to it unless there's a real serious reason not to do it. So that's kind of an example of a malicious reason, or I would say a morally incorrect reason why people will flake. But I think that a lot of times people flake not for such reasons, but just out of very innocent reasons. And I think that's the first step in trying to deal with flakers, is trying to understand that often the motivation is not malicious at all. Okay, I have a recent example whereby someone I made plans with really wanted to do those plans, and then they flaked on me, and I realized that what was going on there is that the person really did want to do the plans. And when they made the plans with me, it was traveling to a different city here in Israel. They were really serious about it, but they weren't. Their desire to do this. To do this trip was kind of hiding them from the hold on, I'm just going to change something here. Was kind of hiding them from, or kind of blocking them from, the ability to realize that, practically speaking, they couldn't do it because they had too many obligations with work, they had too many obligations with family, stuff like that. So in the end, the person did cancel out, did flake, but it wasn't malicious. It was annoying, but it wasn't a malicious reason. So a lot of times when people make plans, you have to understand that they're doing it with the best intentions, so they're doing it as an expression of their desires to carry out those plans, but they don't realize maybe until a couple of days or even a day or sometimes even a couple of hours before the plans take effect that practically speaking they can't do those plans and they never should have made those plans to begin with. So that's one example of a non-malicious. Just give me one expression or example of an expression of a non-malicious intent for flaking. And some people just have kind of I don't know if I would call it weakness in character, but they're kind of pulled around a little by their desires. And so yes, they say, oh, would you like to go to, I don't know, such and such restaurant on such and such? Oh yeah, absolutely, count me in. I'm going to do it. And their desires to do such a thing kind of pull them to say yes to too many things. And then when the time comes, they realize that they really don't have the time or the resources, or the desire to do such things. So that's kind of a non-malicious, intention towards flaking, as opposed to the first example I gave, which was a much more, I would say, malicious intent for flaking, where something better comes along. I'll make plans with person A unless something better comes along, then I'll just cancel with person A and go on to person B. Okay, so that it's important to realize and recognize the motivations why that cause people to flake. Okay, and as I always mention, this group that I've been associated with many years called Recovery International, and they have these things called spottings, which are kind of little statements that you can say to yourself to kind of, I would say, gain perspective or allow your inner mind to gain perspective on the outer world. It's called the outer environment in recovery. So one of these statements that I also often like to use is that temper is blind to the other side of the story. Temper is blind to the other side of the story. We have our side of the story. Some person just flaked on us. We invested time. We invested perhaps money. We certainly invested emotional, anticipation that we're going to spend some time with a good friend or, with a good acquaintance, and the person flakes. And we only see our side of the story, but there is another side to the story. Maybe the person, didn't realize that they just couldn't follow through with it. And then sometimes in the third category, okay, is actual emergencies that come up. Okay, actual emergencies that come up, and of course this happens from time to time. And of course, in that case, we have to be completely forgiving to the other person if it is indeed a real emergency. So let's separate the reasons people flake into three categories, just as I'm going to separate flakers into three categories. So the reasons people flake, I'm going to separate into three categories. The first is malicious intent, okay? Meaning, I make plans with people, and then if someone more popular or someone that I like better comes along, I just cancel the first plans, flake out on them, and go to the second plans. I would call that malicious and morally repugnant, and we'll talk about how to deal with such people afterwards, okay? The second reason would just be best of intentions, or being pulled by desires. So often making plans is an expression of a desire to do something, and when a person has a desire to do something, they sometimes don't take into account the practical considerations required for doing it, and then suddenly the date gets close, and again they realize, I made a mistake, I really can't do this, I don't have the money to do this, I don't have the time to do this, I have too much work, I have too many family obligations. So that's not a malicious intent to flake, but that's kind of we'll call it a careless or we'll call it a careless or an uncareful intention behind flaking. Okay, they need to train themselves. Such people need to train themselves to break that kind of habit, even though they didn't maliciously intend to flake out. Okay, and then the third thing is an actual emergency that comes up, and if somebody has a family emergency or a work emergency, whatever the case may be, then they really are, as we would say in Hebrew, anus. They're really prevented from doing anything otherwise, and you just have to understand that that's the situation. Okay, so we could try to look or try to estimate when we're dealing with people what the motivation is behind the reason that they flaked out on us, and act accordingly. Okay. The first one would mean perhaps that you really want to reevaluate your desire to make plans with such a person. I'm talking about the malicious intent. And maybe you even want to reevaluate a friendship with such a person. The second one, where it's not malicious, it's just kind of careless reasons behind the flaking, uncareful planning or expression of desire rather than taking taking into account the practical considerations of life, that maybe you want to have a good sit down with the person and have a heart to heart with the person, talk it out, and try to prevent that from happening in the past, and explain to them how that's hurting your plans, how that's hurting your expectations, and how it's just generally not nice and not a good thing. Okay, and then the third thing is emergency, and if the reason behind is emergency, then forgive and forget. That's what happens sometimes. Of course, if people are constantly having emergencies, then there should be suspicion there that it's not really an emergency, that something else is going on, that the emergency is either being used as an excuse, or this person is just so bird-brained that that their life is so chaotic that they constantly have emergencies and red fire alarms going off in their life all the time, and then you may want to put them in either category, one or two. Okay, so let's sum up with that. In the meantime, intent, malicious intent. Okay, person finds something better to do, finds someone more popular to hang out with, find someone they like better, they cancel, and then they make other plans. Not good. Careless or unthought out intent or careless intent, then a person wants to come along, is expressing their desire to do such an activity, but then finds out over time it's just not practical, they don't have the time, they don't have the resources to do it, then time for maybe a good heart-to-heart talk. And emergencies, forgive and forget. So those are the three types of reasons behind why people flake, okay? And it's important to identify as best you can when you're dealing with flakers. And now we're going to get to the three types of flakers. When you're dealing with flakers, it's best to identify which type of flaking you're dealing with. Now let's talk about the three types of flakers, okay? You have your occasional flaker, okay? You have your repeat flaker, and you have your serial flaker, okay? Your occasional flaker is going to once in a while, is generally reliable, and every so often, or maybe once in a while, or maybe it's the first time, the person flaked out on you at the last minute. And what you do in that case? I think at that point, I always say give 3 chances, okay? If the person flakes out the first 3 times, I kind of give them a pass, okay? Just like I have a rule at my house, the first 3 times a guest comes over, they're a guest. After that, they're more like a member of the family. They have to start washing the dishes and helping out washing the dishes and making the table and all that kind of stuff. So it's the same with a flaker, okay? So the first 3 times I kind of give a pass, okay? But I make a little mental mark in my mind, okay? I make a little note to myself that this person is, maybe starting to flake on me, okay? And of course, none of this is cut and dried. If you determine that the reason behind the flaking is maybe the first reason, the malicious reason, then maybe you want to be a little bit more harsh. If you find out it really is 3 emergencies, meaning the third reason behind flaking, emergency, then maybe you want to forgive and forget completely. Okay, so it's a general guideline. It's not cut and dried. Every situation based on itself. Okay, let me turn back to myself and get a picture of my beautiful, gorgeous face. Fit for modeling, and so. That's the first type of flaker. You know what? I think I can concentrate better when I'm not looking at myself. So back to Jerusalem. So that's the first type of back to myself. Back to Jerusalem. Back to myself. So that's the first type of flaker. Okay, is someone who occasionally flakes. At that point, you just want to be making a little bit of a mental note. Okay. The second type of flaker is what I call a repeat flaker. This is someone who shows a general pattern over time of on a semi-regular basis of flaking out on plans that you make. Okay, and again, nothing's cut and dried. It all depends on the context. It all depends on if you can identify what the reasons are behind the person who behind the flakes, behind the reasons why the person's flaking. Then you can adjust accordingly. But in general, if you've identified someone as a regular flaker, they do this, on more than 3 times. They do this, every second or third time that you make plans with them, they start flaking out. Then you have to take it to the next level. Now you have to consider this, instead of DEFCON 1, which is the occasional flaker, now you have to consider it DEFCON 2. You're dealing with a repeat flaker. And there are 2 things that I like to do with repeat flakers. Okay, the first thing that I like to do is after they flaked for the time that I now have decided it's time to go into action, I want to to sit down and I want to have a talk with them. And I want to say, listen, Joe, just throwing out that name. I don't know anyone named Joe who's flaked on me. Okay, Joe, listen, you have to understand, okay, when we make plans, okay, I go to great lengths to try to keep the plans. Sometimes and I put in a lot of time. I block out time in my schedule, which otherwise I would be doing something else. Sometimes I've spent money preparing, whatever the case may be. Listen, you have to understand that this pattern of flaking, or that when you flake, it disturbs me. It disturbs my schedule. It disrupts my schedule, and I'd like you to really pay attention in the future. That if we make plans, that you do your best, that you stick to those plans, okay? So what you've done is you haven't been attacking, you haven't been criticizing, you've laid down the law, you've let the person know that you're aware of this pattern of behavior, and you've asked the person in a nice, polite, and straightforward way to stop, to be more careful about this behavior, okay? That's the first step, okay? The second thing you can do is, if you see that the person is a regular flaker, and maybe this is still continuing a little bit before that you put them into category 3, which is the serial flaker, and we'll get to that in a second. The second thing you can do is that before you make plans with the person, or as you're making plans with the person, you can have the talk with them then. You can say, listen, I want to make sure that the plans we make right now, you're 100% sure, okay? I don't want any flaking. There have been such and such incident in the past. When we were supposed to go to Tiberias, you flaked on me. And when we were supposed to go to Paris, you flaked on me, or whatever. Such and such restaurant, you flaked on me. I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. Okay, I don't mind if you don't make the plans, but if you make the plans with me, unless it's a real emergency, then I please want you not to flake. Okay, so that's stage 2 of the repeat flaker. Okay, that's where you talk to the person before flaking. And I'll go over all of these, okay? Then the third stage is, okay, if you see the repeat flaker is really almost to the point of a serial flaker, or if you have very important plans. Let's say you have plans where you have to invest a lot of time in preparation, or a lot of money in preparation. Let's say you and your family and the other person's family are taking a trip together to London or something like that, okay? Then I don't know why anyone would want to visit London, but I'm just joking. So I've actually been to London twice. So at any rate, then maybe what you want to do is you want to get something in writing. I'm not talking about necessarily a contract that's presentable in court, although if it's really a serious amount of time and money for investment, you may even want to get to that level. But maybe you want to get something in writing. You want to say, listen, Joe, let's sit down, okay? I want to know that you're serious about these plans, and let's sit down. These are the plans, these are the dates, these are our responsibilities, okay? And I want to make sure that we're on the same page, okay? I'm gonna put it in my calendar. You're gonna put it in my calendar. We're gonna put it on this piece of paper, and we're both gonna sign it, okay? Because there've been a couple times you flaked on me in the past, and now it's really getting to the point where it's becoming disturbing, and it's getting to the point where maybe I have to invest a lot of time and money on these plans. Let's sit down and get it in writing, okay? So those are the 3 stages, okay? Let's back up and review a little bit. We're talking about 3 types of flakers. We're talking about the occasional flaker. We're talking about the repeat flaker, and we're talking about the serial flaker. We have not yet gotten to the serial flaker. We'll get to the serial flaker in a second, okay? But for the occasional flaker, what you want to do at that point is you want to start making a mental note. You don't necessarily want to have a heart-to-heart with the person. You don't necessarily want to directly address the situation yet. You just want to start making a mental note. Listen, this is the second time this guy or this girl has flaked down on me. I don't know what's going on here. It doesn't seem like it was completely an emergency. It seems like, something else is going on there. Maybe they just like to make plans and they don't realize that they're not going to be able to fulfill them. Something's going on here. I'm gonna give it another try. Hold my breath and give it another try, and let's see what happens, okay? That's the occasional flaker. The repeat flaker, someone who has already established a pattern of flaking, I'll say more than 3 times. So the occasional flaker up to 3 times. The repeat flaker, someone who's already established a pattern of flaking more than 3 times in, let's say, the past year. Okay, then now you want to have a sit down. You want to have a heart to heart with the person, and there are 3 levels of that heart to heart, depending on how serious or how advanced the repeat flaking is. First level, after the person flakes the next time, have a sit down with them, or if you can't, call them on the phone. Okay, and you say, listen, this is now the 4th time you flaked on me, and I really like you. You're a good friend. this is really causing me a lot of problems. I'm making plans. I block out time. I have expectations that I'm going to spend some time together, as friends, and then you flake out. Please, okay? I want you to know that I'm aware of this, and I really, really would like if you stop this in the future, okay? If you can't make plans, then don't make plans. But if we do make plans, then please stick with them in the future. That's level 1. Level 2, you have the talk before you make the plans, okay? If you have someone who's really a more advanced repeat flaker, then before you make plans, listen, we've had problems in the past, okay? I just want to make sure that when we make these plans, okay, that these plans are solid. Unless there's an emergency, the sky falls, your house, crumbles to the ground, 5 minutes before our plans are scheduled to go into effect, then I want you to not cancel out, or I want to know that you're not going to cancel out. And if you can't promise me that, then it's better we don't make the plans at all. And then level 3 is if it's a very advanced case of repeat flaking, or if it's an event or a get-together that requires a lot of time and or money investment, then you maybe even want to get something in writing. You want to sit down and say, listen, let's put this down in writing. Okay, let's say that this is what we're planning to do. This is when we're planning to do it. Get it in writing. Not that it's necessarily admissible in a court of law, but what all of these three things do on graduated levels of seriousness or assent is it puts the other person in line. Okay, when you extract a promise from a person, okay, then they're more likely not to cancel out on you. Okay, if you extract even an oral promise, right? We're not talking about court of law here or something like that. If you extract an oral promise from a friend, then they're more likely to stick to it. Okay, only the third level requires a written promise, because there maybe it's gone so far, or it's requiring a lot of time and perhaps money. Okay, so I hope that point is clear. Let's talk about the third level of flaker. That is a serial flaker. This is someone who is just, has a horrible pattern of flaking out on you. They generally flake out on you. You can expect them almost to flake out on you. And they've done it in the past. You've already had the talk with them. You've already had the talk with them, and maybe a couple of times, and it just isn't stopping. And then you have to stop. Okay, you have to set boundaries. You have to do this not only with people who flake. You have to do this with everyone in your life. You need to know your boundaries, and you need to set boundaries. You have to do this with your children. You have to do this with your boss. Sometimes you have to do this with those under you at work. You have to do this with your spouse. Everyone has to set their boundaries, okay? And if it's come to the point where it's unbearable, or it's repeat and nothing is changing, then you have to set your boundaries, and you have to make one of two decisions. The first decision is, I stop making plans with this person, okay? And you could tell the person, listen, I cannot make plans with you anymore. This happened recently to a friend who's actually a very good friend of mine. I love him, but I said, listen, for the next 6 months, I'm not making any plans with you, because you flaked on me now a couple of times. That's it, okay? I'm not making any more plans with you, okay? And you can make it permanent. You can make it for a certain period of time, okay? I would say until further notice. That's the way I usually put it, okay? But you make it clear to this person, I'm not making any more plans with you. You flake down on me, that ruins my schedule, okay? that causes me time loss. That causes me time loss that I could have spent planning for other things. Time that I could have blocked out. I could have blocked out that time to do other things with my life. I have a very busy life. I have other things to do, and this is enough. Enough is enough. I am not making any plans with you. I like you. You're still my friend. Well, I'm not making any more plans with you until further notice, okay? And then that's it. However that person reacts, maybe they're going to say, okay, I'm so sorry, please give me one more chance. Then you decide. I would say no. At this point, that's it. We'll give it a trial period where we don't get together. Maybe in the future, I'll kind of reevaluate when I feel I'm ready to, and then we can get together again. But if the pattern repeats itself, then that's it. We're right back to where we started. No more plans, okay? And so that's the repeat offender, the repeat flaker, okay? That's level 1 for the repeat flaker, and now we go to level 2 for the repeat flaker. If someone is really constantly flaking out on you, and you think that they're just doing it because they have no respect for you, they have no respect for your boundaries, that's a sign they have no respect for the friendship that you and them have, that you and they have. They have no respect for you as a human being. They have no respect for your boundaries, and that's it. You may, at that point, need to consider cutting off that person as a friend, okay? Over the years, I have found myself, as I get older, and hopefully a little bit wiser and a little bit more mature, I find that I cut off friends. I don't do it maliciously. I don't look to cut off friends, but anyone who no longer serves my purposes and my needs and is at the level of maturity that I hope and believe that I've achieved, they're no longer useful to me in my life as a friend. I could be acquaintances with them. I could, I'm not going to be nasty to them when I run, when I pass them on the street. But at a certain point, you have to realize that if someone doesn't respect you, if someone's not on the same level of maturity as you, if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, if someone doesn't respect who you are as a person, then it may be a sign that at that point, it may be time to cut off contact with that person. And if a person is constantly flaking on you, then it's a sign either something's wrong with them, or that they think something's wrong with you, that they're not treating you with the proper respect, and that's a sign that it really is time to cut off a friendship. Okay, so that's obviously the most severe level, but it may have to happen not only for the reason of flaking, for many reasons in one person's life, but we're not going to go down that. Excuse me, I'm drooling. We're not going to go down that road right now. We're talking specifically about flaking. So if you have a serial flaker who isn't getting the message, who seems to be, completely, disregarding your time, your boundaries, your very essence as a human being, you're respecting you as a fellow human being, it may be time, it may be a sign that this is not a good friend, this is not someone who needs to be in your life, this is not a person who's adding to your life, and it may be time to just cut off contact with that person and filter out and find some better friends to hang out with. Okay, so that's it. Let's try to summarize here, and then I'll end the video. Okay, we spoke about 3 types of flaking, and we spoke about 3 types of flakers. Let's go very briefly over the 3 types of flaking. 3 types of flaking: malicious, okay, careless, and completely unintentional or emergency. Malicious, we already spoke about. I'm not going to repeat it again. Somebody finds something better to do and flakes out on you. This is a nasty thing to do, and this is like the most serious level of flaking. Next, inadvertent or careless. We'll call it negligent, but not malicious. Okay, person is expressing intents and desires of doing certain activities or going certain places when they make plans with you, but they don't realize the practical considerations in their life won't allow it. Okay, it's something they have to work on, but they're not really doing it maliciously. They just didn't think things out carefully, and this is a kind of pattern that could repeat itself. Okay, and the third reason: family emergency, work emergency, any type of emergency. Okay, you have to forgive and forget. You have to cut the blame from that person, and you cannot blame that person. It happens. That's life. The only thing to pay attention to is if there are too many emergencies, then that's a sign that something else is going on there. So those are the 3 types of flaking. Now let's talk about the 3 types of flakers: the occasional flaker, the repeat flaker, the serial flaker. The occasional flaker, okay, just keep an eye out. Okay, the person flakes up to 3 times. Keep an eye out. Make a mental note. What's going on here? What are the reasons behind it? Maybe at some point in the near future, I need to have a talk with this person. I need to have a sit down, a face-to-face with this person. Level number 2, the repeat flaker, someone who I'll say more than 3 times has flaked in the past year, let's say, give or take. Again, there's no mathematical formula here. I'm just kind of giving, general, I would say average circumstances. Each case has to be worked out on its own. But if someone has flaked more than 3 times in the past year, then it's time to have a talk with this person. Okay. First levels, have a talk after they flake again. Okay. Listen, this is not good. I'm spending time, I'm spending effort, and you keep on flaking on me. Please, let's please make this stop in the future. Second level, if it continues, then you have to have a talk before you make the plans, or as you're making the plans. Oh, you want to get together next Tuesday, and we're going to go to this such and such restaurant? Listen, you flaked on me in the past. I don't care if we don't make these plans, but if we make these plans, unless there's a serious reason, come hell or high water, then please then you have to stick with these plans. All right, this is getting to a point where I need to say this to you. Okay, third level, if it's a very serious repeat flaker, or it's a very serious event that you are planning, then you have to maybe even get it in writing. Sit down. This is the time I'm going to put in. This is the time you're going to put in. This is the money I'm going to put in. This is the money you're going to put in. I want to make sure that these plans are stuck with, and they must be stuck with unless it's an absolute emergency. Okay, and maybe if there's money involved or even time involved, maybe you even want to write in there some kind of monetary compensation that the other person would get. Okay, so those are the 3 levels of repeat flaker, and then we have a serial flaker, someone who just has a pattern of flaking they're not breaking out of it. You've had the talk with them. You've had multiple talks with them. You've tried to do everything you can, and they still keep on flaking, okay? Then at that point, 2 levels, okay? The first level of severity, I'm stopping to make plans with you, okay? No more plans between you and I until further notice. And the second level of severity is, listen, you don't even have to say to the person. You just decide yourself, this person has no respect for me, doesn't respect my boundaries, doesn't respect my time, doesn't respect my space, doesn't respect me as a human being, and seems to be able to play with my time any way it wants. Then maybe it is seriously time to cut that person out of your life and end the friendship with them. So that's it. That is my insight, my advice on how to deal with flakers. So this has been Melech Ben Yaakov of Biblical Life Coaching, coming to you live from the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, Israel. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have enjoyed it, then please share it, please comment on it. And if you're interested in engaging in biblical life coaching with moi, then you can either send me a message on Facebook, or you can visit my website, www.biblicallifecoaching.com, or you can call me or text me at the American phone number, which is listed on the Facebook page or on the website. And I'll just say it right now. It's 347-901-5695. That's 347-901-5695. And hope to hear from you. And I'll end with some nice views of the walls of Jerusalem as the sun has already set and the evening lights have come out. So, hope you enjoy.